Stirling Talks with Wilson on Stirling Community Radio.
This is Stirling Talks on Stirling Community Radio. I do believe we have, our first author with us here in the studio this morning. Good morning, Elaine.
Good morning, Wilson.
It is so good to have you here with us. We've been going back and forth on Instagram here for a little bit. We'll get to make sure you follow her on Instagram because it's authentic and it's real and it's good stuff. One of the things you'll see when people go to your Instagram is history and fiction, historical fiction. Before we get started on anything, what does that mean?
Okay, so historical fiction to me is fiction, it's a novel, it's a really good story, but it's set in the past. So that's the historical bit. So my books are not the history you get in school about famous people in history. They're about settings and culture, and mainly Stirling, actually, in a past time. Mainly the late 1800s and the early 1900s are the particular times I'm interested in.
So just right off the top, there's little bits of history that people would maybe recognize, things that this is a place, this actually happened here, something like that, worked into one of your stories. That means you've got to do a bit of research for these, right?
Well, I'd have to do a lot of research for these. I haunt the archives. I think the Stirling Council Archives will be sick of the sight of me. But for the book, The Rescue Sisters, which was inspired by Whinwell Children's Home in Stirling, which was there for nearly 100 years. It's shut down now, but it was in Lower Bridge Street in Stirling. Rescue Sisters was inspired by that. So I would say on average, I spend 6 months researching a topic and then 6 months actually writing the book. So it's a long time and a lot of visits to the archives.
And how it's pretty creative too, looking at some of the excerpts, because it's intertwining your story, this creative story that you've come up with the history here. That's got to be, I imagine, at times fascinating, but also a bit frustrating because you've got things and you got a storyline that you're trying to work into this research that you've done.
Yeah, what I tend to do, I mean, my stories, although they may be inspired by real people and real individuals, they are not fictionalised versions of real people. What I do is, somebody like, for example, Annie Kroll is the real life person who ran Whinwell Children's Home. And she was the inspiration for my character in The Rescue Sisters, who's called Eliza Frew. But Eliza Frew has her own storyline. She runs a home. She has a similar background of evangelical Christianity as Annie Kroll, but I've invented her story. I've invented her backstory, but I've taken a lot from real life in terms of what happened to children who went into the home, and it focuses on those who were sent to Canada, who poor orphans or poor kids who were sent away. So I take a lot of what happened in real life, but enmesh it. And the good thing about fiction is I can make things up. So I don't have to follow, and I don't want to follow anybody's life in great precision. It's more, to me, it's an inspiration. So the people in the past that provide the inspiration, the context of the past, what was society like, what was culture like at the time. And then I have characters plunked in the middle of that, and it's right, this happens, what if?
So, and before we came on air here, we chatted for a bit, and you said that one of the people's remarks here where, even where they normally wouldn't go for historical fiction or something like this, you've had people that have said, you know what, I gave it a chance and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and these are the reviews that I love, because it may sound strange, but I did not used to like historical fiction. Well, I thought I didn't like it.
Right.
And I think that kind of comes from school and the kind of books, and is it Walter Scott or things like that. But I really got into historical fiction about 6 or 7 years ago when I read a book called His Bloody Project by Graham McCrae Burnett. And it's probably my favourite book, and I always recommend it to anybody. Because I'd never thought, it's set in 17-something, I can't remember the exact date, up in the north of Scotland. But I was so engrossed in the story, I didn't even consider it historical fiction. And I actually met him at an author event he was doing, and I said to him, I've got you to thank for turning me into historical fiction. And he said it was really interesting. He said, I don't really consider it historical fiction. I was just writing a story in it, and it's actually more crime is his thing. And that's how I feel. It's a good story, but I love to set them in the past because I think there are so many interesting aspects of the past, particularly in terms of women and women's lives at that time and what the limitations and restrictions were for normal everyday women.
And you just led into my next question here perfectly. You do have an event coming up. I want to chat about that here in just a little bit. But there does seem to be a theme amongst your writings that I've seen where you are sharing stories about women. Why is that important to you?
I mean, from a personal level, it stems from, I feel I can kind of reach back to that period because my granny was born in 1897 and she was one of 13. She had to leave school at 14 because that's what they did in those days. And she moved, they came from West Lothian, Bathgate, and she moved to Stirling to become a domestic. Now, I don't know if she was a maid or a servant. And I just think I can... she was alive. She was relatively old when I was born. She was 67. So I had a short time with her. But I feel I can touch back to that time through her. And I often think of the opportunities that I've had in my life that she couldn't have ever comprehended what life, only 2 generations later, what opportunities I would have. So I often would think, what would it have been like for someone of my granny's age when these things were happening in Stirling, in the world, in general, in the community. So
right.
that's where my interest in it comes, and the more I research it, the more interesting it becomes in terms of particularly the limitations and restrictions on women, unless they were very upper class.
Right. This is Stirling Community Radio. Stirling Talks is the name of the show. One of the things that we do here at Stirling Community Radio is we do work with a lot of young people, and we have them come in up through the various programs and all of that, and I'm a big fan of that. 2 things here, talking about some of those young people that might be listening here. Why do you think it is important for a young person to maybe explore some of this history, women's history, and what advice would you give to a young person that may want to be an author?
That's a really good question. When you talk about young people, I look back at myself, I had no interest in history. And it's really only since I've become older that I've become interested in history. But I wish I'd been interested sooner. I think you can learn so much. First thing is you can appreciate the opportunities that you now have in 2026 compared to when my granny left school in, 1911 or whatever.
Let me just say to your kids out there, I know that sounds ancient. That's really not that long ago. I mean, your granny was still alive when you were alive.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's the thing. It isn't that long ago. And if you look back at what opportunities they didn't have that you now have and what you can do as a young person, which was never done in those. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, I'm going to sound like my dad here, because he always used to say there's nothing new under the sun. And one of the things I've learned in researching history is that there is nothing new under the sun. Things repeat themselves, mistakes repeat themselves. And the most important thing that stays the same is people and their emotions and feelings and their experiences. It doesn't matter if you're talking about 1897 or 2026. You still fall in love, you still have grief, all these sorts of things. And I think, to realise that, you may be living at this time, but you're part of a bigger sea of humanity that we've all gone through similar experiences, albeit the society in which we've lived may be different.
For someone that may want to get into writing and do this wasn't really something you planned on doing. You were just inspired. Why do you think that spark went off for you to go, I'm going to write a book?
Well, I have always been interested in writing, but from very young, I think when I was 18, somebody said to me, what do you want to be? And I sort of said vaguely, I'd quite like to be a writer, without knowing what that actually was, just because I enjoyed writing. And then I got a proper job, and then you kind of climb the greasy pole. And I was always interested. I did write, but I didn't really have the time to devote to it. So it was only when I stepped away from my career, I thought, this is it. If I don't try now, I'm not going to do it. So I decided that was what I was going to focus on.
Right.
You have to love it because it takes, my kind of writing takes a long time. The research takes a long time. The writing, it takes a long time. I mean, some writers write a couple of books a year, maybe more. I don't. Some to be fair take 10 years to write one, but it's not a quick process. But I think if you feel it and you want to do it, do it, go for it. There's so many avenues now you can get your work out there. So
I will
take
just say one thing, because you said proper job. And that's something, because in my previous life, I did go and speak with, we've got young people here, and I would go and speak to young people, and I look back and I cringe on myself now, where I would be in a communications class or a television class or a radio class or something like that, and be like, get a backup plan, because this is tough. If it's what you want to do, and if you believe in it, do it.
Yeah.
If you love it, like what you said, if you love it, you'll do it. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think the problem for writing and many of the arts is that you can't live on it, particularly when you start out.
Right.
So you have to get another job.
Right.
And it's one of these jobs where, you write for a year and you don't get any resources for that.
Right.
Unless you're very, very famous and you've got a big fancy deal.
Right.
So you have to have another stream of income. So, it's very difficult.
I know that our friends at Creative Stirling have done a lot to help artists here, and Creative Scotland's done a lot for that as well. But definitely, if you are creative and you haven't been into the shop downstairs from our studios, you were just walking around there, I know. This is a great place to network and meet creative people that might be able to help you with some of that as you're doing your proper job. So we'll do that. You've got this event coming up. Quickly, tell me a little bit more about that up at the Legends, right?
Yeah, the event's on the 5th of March at 7 p.m. at the coffee shop at Legends at the Monument. And it's an event to coincide with International Women's Day. And I'm going to be talking about some of my research. I think it's called Women's Lives from Fact to Fiction. So I'm going to be talking about a few of the inspirations for my novels, and speaking about the real people behind those, or the real groups of people in some cases behind those. So it lasts an hour, and you get a free cuppa with your ticket, which you can get on the Legends website under events or Eventbrite through Stirling Heritage Alliance.
And we'll have that linked up for you on our social medias as well. Your social medias, I am a new fan on there. You're on there a lot. You do a lot on Instagram, don't you?
Yes, Instagram's my main one. I am on the others, but I don't really post on them. They're just signposting.
Yeah.
But yeah, Instagram I'm on pretty regularly, so you can keep up.
What's your Instagram?
Elaine Whiteford Writer. Instagram. Yeah.
Well, appreciate that. Thank you so much. You got that event coming up, and we're definitely going to have you back again. I am a new fan, so thank you so much for that. This is Stirling Community Radio. Stirling Talks. We'll be back.